Japan, more specifically the town of Hiroshima.
Welcome back to yet another episode of Book Club. In today's episode, we are back yet again at Japan, and more specifically, Hiroshima. Previously, in one of my episodes, I did a story about a special child called Sadako Sasaki, and I did a review of the book of Sadako Sasaki's life here. And I'll leave all the links in the description to her video here below, so you can check out her video later. And in today's video, we are going to be talking about Japan, more specifically Hiroshima. And the book that we're talking about today is called Hiroshima by John Hersey. So let's get straight into the video. So starting us off today, the author of this emotional and amazing book is John Hersey. John Hersey was an American author and a journalist, and he was known for being one of the most earliest practitioners of this concept, which was introduced in the 19th, which was called New Journalism. So what is New Journalism, you may ask? New Journalism is a way of storytelling which is about a concept which is adapted into a non-fiction reportage. And John Hersey, one surprising fact, and one of the most important facts, was that one of his World War II books got the Pulitzer Prize award for its excellence for his novel, the first ever book he wrote, in 1945. And what is Pulitzer Prize? I have reviewed another book before called All the Light We Cannot See, which was a Pulitzer Prize-winning book. And same as John Hersey's Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Pulitzer Prize, which a lot of people ask, what is Pulitzer Prize? Pulitzer Prize is awarded to excellence in musical composition, literary achievements, and magazine articles. Now I'll be giving a summary of the book. But before that, I need to tell you about how this book came to be published and written. And this was the book that introduced the new concept of new journalism. And before that, I'll explain to you how John Hersey started to write this book. In May 1946, John Hersey went to Japan to study and research more about the bombing and Hiroshima and the people about them. And then he asked and questioned and interviewed many people and came to conclusion to choose 6 people who were 6 survivors, mind you, of the bombing, which killed almost 100,000 people and injured more than 100,000 people when the bomb was dropped in 1945 August by America. So he reviewed 6 people, one of which was a Jewish priest, another one a widowed seamstress, 2 doctors, and a young lady who worked in a factory. So in this book, it went through all the stories and each and everyone's encounters of the war and the bombing and how it affected each and every individual of these 6 people separately, and all compiled together into a book, which was previously an article. So this book has all the experiences and instances and cases and feelings and thoughts of the war by all of these 6 people. And later on, in the last few chapters, which is another fact, is that after 40 years since the bomb, he went again and asked the 6 people, and that's when he finished his last chapter. And that was about how they felt after 40 years since the bombing. So firstly, there's a character called Mr. Kiyoshi Tanimoto, who is a community leader and is also followed by another Jewish, not really Jewish, but Methodist priest who is an American educated person. So these 2 are left uninjured by the bomb which happened on 1945 in Hiroshima. And what they did was after the bomb fell, they tried to help as many injured people and as many people who are weak and wounded and are unable to move, and are also aided by another person who is a Jewish priest whose name is Father Kleinsorge. So despite his illness and injuries, he came about and helped the people. And as the flames were growing and enroaching, they had to act fast, and they brought the people to the outskirts of the city near a park to whom were injured and provided them with basic necessities like water, as to save as many people from suffering and dying after the effects. Among those people was another person called Mrs. Hatsuyo Nakamura, who was also saved and rescued and accommodated by Father Kinslorge and Mr. Tamimoto and her children. For many weeks after the bomb, Japan slowly starts to recover and surrendered. And then Hiroshima started to rebuild itself slowly, but another terror struck again. And this time, it was the radiation disease and radiation sickness. It killed many people. Though many people survived the bomb, it killed many people later in the aftermath of the bomb. Of such case, the radiation sickness had more symptoms like feverish feelings, nausea, and hair starting to fall off, like how cancer is. And going on, sadly, Dr. Fuji and Father Kleinsorge died a few years after John Hersey came back to review and check on the patients and the survivors of the war, of the so-called war and so-called nuclear bomb. But Mrs. Nakamura and Miss Sasaki came from all the bottom. They were almost feeling like they were gonna die. And they brought up their lives, and finally, that's the good thing, is that they survived and they lived a happy life. On Mrs. Nakamura living on her pension and supporting her children well, and Miss Sasaki becoming a nun. And going on in the book, John Hersey came back to review the 6 people, of which 2 were already dead. And going on, they started living their lives better. And that's how Japan started to recover from the sickness. So though Mrs. Nakamura and Miss Sasaki felt very bad and they wanted to give up, they did not give up. Which is one of the most important parts of this book, which I've learned. And it's not the book. It's not a book. It was firstly an article. So coming to become a book, this was one of the first sort of projects, and how do you call that? Sort of like a establishment of new journalism. And I highly recommend you to read this book. So lastly, John Hersey, the author of this book, found out that Japan still continued to struggle from the aftermath of the bomb, in which many people died from the radiation sickness, and nuclear warfare still spread throughout the world. And even till today, some countries are still producing it. But I'm not going to name who and which countries, but many countries are still producing it. And there is a highly threatening situation of people using nuclear warfare. And history could repeat itself. But John Hersey continued to look at the 6 people who were very, very persistent, who showed signs and feelings of reconcilement, pride in their culture, and how they were very persistent and very enduring, which is one of the good things you can learn from this book, in which how matter life brings you down, you gotta pick yourself up. And that's one of the key moments in this book. And John Hersey, in the last part, wrote about 40 years later after coming back and talking with the other and the remaining 6, out of the 6 people, the remaining people who were alive. And that is a short summary of what Hiroshima is about. by John Hersey. And I'll really recommend you to read this book if you like to know what happened and some feelings and how people felt towards using nuclear warfare, which I believe, in my opinion, is also a very bad thing because it can cause many things and which can last so long. And that's why I'll recommend you to read this book. It's one of the great classics of war, and it's one of the first ever products of new journalism. And I'll leave all the links in the description to the book and about John Hersey and how he came to write this book about Hiroshima. So now I'll be talking about my takeaway. And as said earlier on, I just talked about my takeaway just now. It is about how through darkness there's always light. And we can see this after reading John Hersey's Hiroshima. I saw that throughout these 6 people's life during the war, many thought, out of these 6 people, many of them thought they could not do anything and they were obviously gonna die. But no, that is not the case. These 6 people, they persevered on. They gave light to the flower which bloomed of hope. So this book shows that though there may be circumstances in life and places where you feel like all hope is lost or nothing is possible for you to overcome and everything is taking over you, you should give light to it for it to bloom. So hope can bloom when light is provided to it. And that's my greatest takeaway from Hiroshima, which is vividly explained in this book or portrayed to a certain extent. So that's the most key takeaway from this book, which is, though darkness comes out and you feel like everything is lost, hope is lost, provide light to it and everything can take a turn for the good. And another good thing about Hiroshima was that John Hersey described the lives of the people on the other side of the world. In many war books, they talk about which gadgets they use, what bomb, what type of plane, what type of army, what type of soldiers. There's so many things about the military side of it. But no one really talks about how the people felt and what they went through. So this book clearly showed what the other side of the people and the other side of the story felt towards the bomb, which is one of the key things which are noticeable from this war book and rather than other war books. And now I'd like to talk about one fun fact of the book or something surprising. But before that, Hiroshima brought to many people's eyes as it was one of the first ever products of new journalism. And this has been described as the literature of journalism because of its amazing depiction of people's lives and the amazing clarity and vividness of the description of the book, which was one of those which stood out because journalism is not really describing that many things in detail, but this book really did go all and above just to describe it. And the surprising thing was that John Hersey's Hiroshima was firstly an article which became super famous. It was an article in a magazine. And this was before it was turned into a book, was only made out of the sort of quotes and things said from the 6 people in the article. But now it was transformed to the book throughout the whole 6 people's entire life after the bomb, which was one of the surprising things that I came to notice about Hiroshima when I went through the book and researched about it. And moreover, this book does not show that weapons are good or the superiority of weapons. It shows about how humans can go to their bad side, which means how humans can take the use of nuclear, which they discovered, and use it for the bad side of it. And that is another thing that I noticed from this book. And I'll leave all the links in the description if you want to research more about Hiroshima or know more about John Hersey's book or other books that are written by him or articles, which I'll leave down in the link in the description below for you to check it out later. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, please slap that like button and subscribe as well. Thank you so much for the support and positive feedback which are constructive to me and are very helpful towards me. For giving those feedback over the past few months. for my videos. I really appreciate it. And let's not let history repeat itself and never ever use nuclear warfare ever again in our history and our lifetime. With that, see you again for another video.